So somebody sent in a question that I'll start with. And it reads, is karma really a one-to-one transaction, like verse 9 seems to indicate? No, it's not. It's not like, I hit you in this life, so next life you're going to hit me. No, it doesn't mean like that, because then it would be impossible for any of us to get free, because even if you were practicing the Dharma, if somebody hit you, then you would be obliged to hang around in samsara to hit them back. That doesn't make any sense at all. So what it means is that when we do a negative action, we will experience different results. One is the body we're born into. One is the what happens to us in that life. Another is habitual behavior. And fourth one is the environment that we're born into. And so our karma influences all of these things. Sometimes it's one karma that brings one result. Sometimes it's many karmas together that ripen to bring one result. Yeah. Sometimes it's one karma can bring many results, and sometimes many karmas bring many results. So it's not kind of strict and predictable, because it depends a lot on the cooperative conditions. What are you thinking? What's going on in your life? What choices are you making? And that will influence what karma ripens at any particular time. Okay, so that's why it's quite important to make good choices during our life, because that will create the opportunity for different karmas to ripen. Okay. If you want more details about exactly how karma functions, in volume 2, the volume preceding the one that we're doing currently on Friday night. So volume 2 is the foundation of Buddhist practice. The last few chapters in that book are all about karma. And I taught that too. We have all the videos online. So that's a really good resource for people to look at. It's a very vast topic, okay? And all the details of it, they say only a Buddha knows. Okay, so we'll continue from where we left off. Okay, so we were talking about karma and how karma leaves seeds, or sometimes it's called imprints, predispositions on our mind stream. And then when the conditions come together, these will ripen in terms of our various experiences. Okay, so at the time of death, craving for our present life arises. And some of the karmic seeds on our mind stream ripen, making a particular rebirth appear attractive to us. So what we're reborn as isn't the sum total of all of our karma. It's more that there's different karmic seeds on the mind stream, and some of them will ripen at this time, and the others are still on the mind stream, and they will ripen at another time. We assume that new body and mind, and then cling to that new existence. When our sense powers or sense faculties contact various objects, feelings of pleasure, pain, or neither pleasure nor pain arise. Attachment arises for pleasant feelings, hostility for unpleasant feelings. Isn't it? Yeah, we have a good feeling. I want more. I don't want to be separated. We have even the slightest unpleasant feeling. Ugh, get rid of it. Okay. So wanting happiness and not suffering, we act again to get what we find desirable and destroy or distance ourselves from what we find unpleasant. So you see how there's this cycle going on. Yeah, from ignorance to affliction, to feelings, to afflictions, to karma. The karma ripens in a situation where we have contact with more objects that we see through our ignorance, and we experience pleasant or unpleasant feelings in relationship to them. And then afflictions arise and we do more actions, and it keeps going like this, okay? So we respond to neutral feelings with apathy or boredom and distract ourselves. So actions motivated by kindness, compassion, wisdom, and the like lead to happiness in the future, while actions rooted in greed, hostility, and closed-mindedness bring us suffering. So this cycle goes on and on. We are born into one body after another, experiencing sickness, aging, and death repeatedly. Yeah, our favorite things, huh? We think life is great, but as soon as you're born, at that time you start dying. And in between the time of birth and death, there's sickness and aging. And there's no way to avoid any of it. Yeah, it's just this natural process of samsara, which is why we want to be free of samsara. So between birth and death, we try so hard to get what we want and avoid what we do not want, but we are never completely successful, are we? The world does not cooperate with what we want, and we work very hard to get what we want. We may or may not get it, but unpleasant things that we definitely don't want, they just come automatically. So meanwhile, suffering that we don't wish for comes our way. So this is cyclic existence, and we have been experiencing it beginninglessly. From a Buddhist perspective, there was no initial moment in which this cycle began. Yeah, you might say, but why? How did we get ignorant? That's just the way we were. Okay. Didn't anybody make us ignorant? Didn't anybody create the world? No, there was no external creator. And if there were, we should really complain to him because he didn't do a very good job. He created cyclones and COVID and, all these sorts of things. So there's no outside creator. It's our own actions that create our experience. So cyclic existence is not the creation of an external creator. Rather, everything arises due to its own causes, and everything that functions must have causes and conditions that produce it. Nothing arises without a cause. Therefore, there can be no beginning because everything is preceded by its own causes and conditions. And those causes and conditions were preceded by their causes and conditions. And so there was no beginning point. Yeah. This is like when you look at the number line in math class. Either way you go, positive numbers, negative numbers, there's no beginning or end. Spending our time and energy searching for a beginning is unproductive. The Buddha encouraged us to be practical by giving the example of a man shot by an arrow. If, before getting medical treatment, this man who was shot by the arrow and he's bleeding and he's in pain, if he insisted on knowing who made the arrow and how fast it was traveling and where it came from, If he wanted all this kind of information first, before he dealt with his injury, he would bleed to death, he would die. Okay? So that's why the Buddha says it's best to deal with the present circumstance and get immediate treatment for the wound. Similarly, if we become immersed in theories of a beginning, our life will go by without confronting our suffering and its causes. Instead, it's more useful to deal directly with how afflictions create our misery. Okay, so instead of dreaming up all sorts of theories and this and that and the other thing, deal with the present situation. That's what the Buddha is saying. Be very practical. Yeah, instead of going back and, oh, what did I do to deserve this? And did a creator do it? And, why did this happen to me? And what if I had done something differently? And why didn't somebody else do something different? And we could go on and on and on. Yeah. And it doesn't help us remedy the situation. Yeah. Often it is quite interesting when we have some kind of bad experience. The first thing we say is, why me? Okay? Now, is it really productive to know why me or why this happened to me? Why did it happen to me? I created the cause. And I can get some idea of the cause I created by looking at the kind of result I'm experiencing. Yeah. Do I need to know, what exactly I did in the past life? Do I need to know why this person said this or did this? Yeah. We always want to understand why it happened, but does it really matter why it happened? And will we ever know exactly why it happened? Can we read somebody else's mind to know what their motivation was? And does their motivation really matter? If they intended to harm us, if they didn't intend to harm us, yeah, does it really matter if we got upset? We have to deal with our upset feelings. Yeah, knowing that the person didn't or did intend to harm us, does that really help your upset feeling? Yeah, when somebody says something and your mind is going, I know his motivation for that. Da, 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 da. And then you later find out that that wasn't his motivation. I mean, do you need to know what his motivation is in order to let go of your anger? If you're waiting for somebody to acknowledge their fault and either say, oh, I didn't mean to do that, or yes, I did mean to do that, and you're waiting to hear them acknowledge their motivation before you let go of your anger, what's going to happen? Yeah, you're going to be angry over a lot of things until you die. And even if somebody comes and tells you what their motivation is, what happens if you don't believe it? And what happens if somebody's even not clear on what their motivation is? We're often not clear on what our motivation is. Okay? So the thing is, when something happens in our life and we're upset or whatever, we have to look at our mental state and deal with that. Why somebody else did it is, sometimes it may help knowing why, but often it doesn't help at all. Yeah? I mean, think about it. Think about unfortunate things that happen to you in your life. Does it matter really why the other person said that? Yeah. What matters is how we reacted and what we're going to do with our own unhappiness and our own upset. Hmm? Okay. So don't get involved in creating conspiracy theories about why you think somebody did something. Okay. Then the next section is called Mind Creates Our Experiences. So our mind creates our experience in two ways. First, our mental afflictions motivate the actions that leave karmic seeds on our mind stream and eventually ripen into our experiences as described above. Okay, so the mental afflictions create the karma brings the experiences. Okay, so that's one way that our mind creates our experiences. Second is our thoughts influence our experience in each moment. So what we're thinking and how we look at something influences how we experience it. Okay. So dwelling on perceived injustice to ourselves, we become unhappy and angry. Don't we? Yeah. When we think somebody else has been unfair to me, or somebody else said something offensive, then we get very upset, unhappy, and very angry. Yeah. And the more we contemplate, they said that rude thing to me. Oh, they're so insensitive. Didn't they know how much that hurts? We go round and around, we get more and more upset. We've all done it, haven't we? Okay. And then the more and more we ruminate, the more upset we get, and the more we can't stand the other person, the angrier we get, and then we, sometimes just explode on the other person. And then, what's really interesting is we will stockpile all of our perceived injustices. Yeah. And when we explode, we will bring out all of our ammunition in the stockpile. And 3 months ago you said this, and 1 year ago you did that. And 5 years ago, I remember what you did. And 10 years ago, you said this. And we just totally all over the person. Yeah. Itemizing every single thing that we think they've done wrong for the last whatever. And if we could remember beginningless lifetimes, we would spend another endless period of time reciting all of those things that other people have done to us. Okay? So it makes us pretty miserable, doesn't it? Okay? But contemplating the kindness we have received from others, then we perceive others as friendly and generous, and our mood lightens. So depending on what we look at, what we focus on, we can see kindness or we can see injustice and abuse. Yeah. So a simple exercise is to observe the thoughts behind each of our moods, seeing how those thoughts, and not the external situation, affect our emotions and feelings of happiness and misery. So once when I was on a plane, they show these movies and this was before you had your own personal screen. It was one screen, and so they were playing some kind of movie. I don't know what it is, but I looked up at one point, and there was a woman in a kind of dark room, and a skeleton walked out into the room, and you could see it behind her, and she turned around, and the skeleton, and she went, yeah. Okay, and totally freaked out seeing the skeleton. So I thought, what would happen if she saw the skeleton and she turned around and she said, hello? Okay, in other words, instead of seeing a skeleton and immediately projecting harm, what if she saw the skeleton and thought, oh, some being? And you go and you say hello. Now, it sounds crazy, but if you start off with an attitude of friendliness, it's going to change the whole dynamic. We have people who just drive up our driveway, and we have no idea who they are, and they stop and they get out and they start walking around. And, the mind could go, oh, we're in Eastern Washington. This is a place where people like to open carry their guns, especially people from Idaho, because they have it, and Idaho's only 4 miles away. And who are these people coming on our property? We don't want them here. And we could, go out and say, get out of here. Or we could go out and say, can I help you? And then they usually say, oh, we were just driving around. Yeah. And then that ends it. Although one time we had a couple who didn't turn around. But that story we will save for another time. You remember that? Okay, so to look at our mood and how we interpret a situation, and then how we interpret it influences how we act, which influences how the situation unfolds. Okay, so the moment afflictions arise, our mind is in a state of suffering. Attachment breeds dissatisfaction or fear of losing what we cling to. So initially, attachment may feel good. Oh, I like this and I got it. Yeah. But then after we enjoy the initial pleasure, it's like, oh, it's over. Yeah, that was such a good hot fudge sundae. Now I need another one. Or it was such a good hot fudge sundae, and now I feel sick to my stomach because I ate too much. Okay, but either way, it's not bringing everlasting happiness, And that's what happens with all the things that we cling to. Okay, so attachment breeds dissatisfaction or fear of losing what we cling to. Jealousy creates a burning sensation inside of us, doesn't it? You burn with jealousy. Ooh, how come that person got the recognition that I deserve? How come they have this opportunity? And you go on and on about it. Yeah, and you're miserable. There was just an article about a woman, I forget what state she was in, and she graduated third in her class, high school class. And she took the high school to court because she said, actually, I should have been first or second. Yeah. And no lawyer would, she couldn't hire a lawyer. No one wanted to take the case. So she went and defended, filled out the forms and defended herself. Yeah. She had already gotten into college and she already had a scholarship to a college. Okay. But she so much wanted to be the valedictorian or the second one, and she was the third one. Yeah. And how many kids behind her would have given an arm and a leg to be the third one? Yeah. But anyway, okay, jealousy creates a burning sensation inside of us. Arrogance stirs up restlessness. Anger may give us a lot of energy, but inside we're not peaceful or happy. In fact, when we're angry, then we see everything as bad, don't we? When somebody did some small thing that you don't like, and then instantly, everybody is like so uncooperative. This place, how these people act. Oh, this is terrible, Isn't it? Yeah. And we blame everybody for everything. So in this way, the afflictions disturb our inner peace when they are manifest in our mind. In addition, they motivate actions that will ripen later in unsatisfactory situations. These situations, in turn, are the field in which more afflictions arise, and we create more karma, and that karma brings more uncontrolled rebirths. Okay, so this is the meaning of cyclic existence. This is how it operates. Seeing this clearly, the strong intention to oppose the three poisonous attitudes of confusion, attachment, and anger arises within us, and we are motivated to attain liberation from this unrelenting cycle of unsatisfactory experiences. So the first step in doing this is to reverse the 8 worldly concerns. Oh, the 8 worldly concerns. Okay, I know you want to skip this section. Yeah, but it's a very important section. We're not going to skip it. Okay, so the 8 worldly concerns are 4 pairs of emotional responses that wreak havoc in this life and plant the seeds for misery in future lives. So the first pair is delight at receiving and possessing money and material possessions, and dejection at not getting them or losing them or having them stolen. Okay? So when somebody gives you something nice, or you get something nice, or they have the kind of food you like, yeah, are you delighted? Is there attachment in your mind? Yeah. And when you don't get what you like, and somebody doesn't do what you ask them to do, yeah, or they forget your birthday. Oh my God. You've been married 65 years and he's never remembered your birthday. Oh, okay. Or you had some kind of possession that you really liked and then it got broken, or it got stolen, or you lost it, and you get unhappy. Mm-hmm. Or you buy Bitcoin or stock or whatever it is, and then, I don't understand these things, but I know that people in Bitcoin they're unhappy. I don't know what happened. The Bitcoin got bit. Yeah. Or your stock goes down, and then so unhappy. Okay, so that's the first pair. The second pair is delight at receiving praise and approval, and dejection when confronted with blame and disapproval. So I want people to praise me and acknowledge me and appreciate me and approve of what I do. Yeah. Because if people don't do that, then I don't feel good about myself. Yeah. I'm a junkie for praise. I need to be praised. I need support. Otherwise, I don't know who I am. And when people approve of me and show appreciation, I am so happy. So happy. But then those same people turn around and they criticize me the next day. And they disapprove of what I do. And then my self-esteem goes completely down. And I doubt myself, and I'm unhappy, and I'm miserable, and I'm craving again for more praise and more appreciation and more approval so that I can be happy again. Sound familiar? Yeah. This is a big one, and we are very attached to praise and approval and very upset about blame and disapproval, especially if we get the blame and disapproval from people that we admire or people that we have a very close relationship with. You know, you go home for Memorial Day, to visit your family, and you're feeling so good, and then, one of your parents says, "Well, how's your job going?" And you just got laid off. Or you got laid off before during COVID, and you've been looking for a job and you haven't found one yet, even though there's lots of them around. And then your parent goes, "You're such a lazy bum." And then, you're shattered. You're shattered, Here's mom and dad, who I really care about. They told me I was a lazy bum. So I need some praise. I need some approval. Can I go cry on somebody's shoulder and they'll tell me it was okay and that it's actually mom and dad's misunderstanding? They really don't understand my situation. And, I want somebody to tell me I'm an okay person, because I don't know who I am. I cannot evaluate myself at all. I'm totally dependent on other people to tell me if I'm worthwhile or not. That's not a good situation to be in, is it? Because it leaves us with attachment, to approval and praise, and then getting totally bummed out when we have disapproval or blame. It's sad. It's very sad, We totally give away our power, and we don't have the ability to analyze our own behavior or our own mental states. So we just rely on other people to tell us if we're okay or not. And why do we think their judgment is necessarily good when they are seeing us through their little teeny-weeny periscope of me, I, my, and mine, just as I'm seeing the world through my teeny periscope of me, I, my, and mine. Okay, so we have to learn to evaluate our own mental states and our own actions and be responsible for them. Okay, then if somebody blames us and what they're saying is true, we'll say, you're right. I wasn't thinking when I did that. That ends the conversation. Yeah. If someone blames you and you go, oh, but I didn't mean that, and you misinterpreted, and you don't have all the information, and it's really this and it's really that, and we get defensive, then we are prolonging the misery, because then the other person doesn't feel understood, they feel criticized. So they're going to come back but you did do X, Y, and Z. And we're going, no, I didn't. And anyway, it's just your projection. Okay. We've gotten involved in this so often, haven't we? Okay. Then the third pair is delight at having a good reputation and displeasure when having a bad one. So praise and blame, the preceding one, is like one person telling you, praising you, or blaming you. Reputation, is what a whole group of people think about you, whether you know those people or not. So, you have a reputation. So you live at the Abbey and you get a reputation. And then a guest comes and says, oh, that monk or nun was so uncooperative. We know exactly who they're talking about. Yeah? They have a reputation. And somebody new said something, and then instantly we know who they're talking about. Okay, so we're very attached to having a good reputation. We don't want to have a bad one. Or any hobbies, that you're good, that you like. You want everybody to like you. Yeah, all the politicians, this whole rigmarole. Yeah, they're just looking to have a good reputation and get some money. And if lying is the way you do it, then so be it. There's this great picture of Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene holding hands with their hands in the air at the end of some rally. You can just imagine what they talked about in their rally. And it's like, we want to have a good reputation. Look at us. We're on Donnie's side. We're spreading the big lie and even more lies. Yeah. So, we can look at them and criticize, and we can look at the Dems who do different things and criticize them too. But the point is, what about us? What do we do to try and get a good reputation? And how bummed out do we get when we have a bad reputation? Yeah. Where our reputation precedes us, and we're going somewhere, and like the people there they already know, oh, so-and-so. Yeah, and we haven't even arrived. So we don't want that kind of reputation. We want the kind of reputation. So when we walk in the door to some big social event, people go, oh, your reputation preceded you, and you are so wonderful, and you do this, and you're famous, and you won the PGA title for home runs. Oh no, that's baseball. Yeah, you won the PGA titles for hole-in-ones. Okay. Yeah. So you must be wonderful. How did you hit a hole-in-one? Well, I took a lot of... I hit the ball many times before I got to the green. And then once I was on the green, that was the hole-in-one. Okay. Then the fourth pair is delight at pleasurable sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and tactile sensations, and unhappiness when encountering unpleasant sensory experiences. Okay, so I'm scratching my arm and wondering if it was a tick. Did a tick bite me? I don't like having an arm that itches. Yeah. And you're probably sitting there, my legs hurt, I want to get up and stretch. And some people are probably thinking the room is too cold, and others are thinking the room is too hot. And some people are thinking, I want medicine meal. I want food. I'm hungry. I don't like being hungry. What are they going to serve? Leftovers. Yeah, what else is new? Which leftovers are they serving? What did we have today? What did we have yesterday? What did we have the day before? I don't like leftovers. I want freshly cooked food. Yeah, the kind that I like. Yeah. Yeah, so we complained. Anyway, we had to drive to the Abbey, and we drove on the dirt road, and it was bumpy. You know? From Spring Valley up the hill, oh my goodness. Yeah, what's it doing to the tires on my car? Or maybe you took the route where you cut off from Highway 2 and then you're on the dirt roads longer, because Spokane County doesn't put asphalt on all of their roads. Penderay County is better, move here. And so then you're driving on the dirt road. You know, yeah. Giddy up. Yeah. Oh, and my air con's off. And it's dusty and it's bumpy. And I'm going to a Buddhist monastery. Okay. So, I mean, so easily we have attachment and aversion, don't we? When you look at these four pairs making the 8 worldly concerns, attachment, aversion, I want, I don't want, I like, I don't like, gimme, get me away. And this is what our life consists of, you know? Spend a few minutes contemplating how these four pairs affect your life. So this is your homework tonight. Okay, go through these and really think about them. from morning till night, and even in our dreams, most of our time and energy are spent trying to get money and possessions, approval and praise, good reputation, and pleasurable sensory experiences, and avoiding the opposites. Isn't it? That's how most of our time and energy is spent, on those 8. The attachment to the pleasant 4 worldly concerns and aversion to the 4 unpleasant ones are so powerful that we will act unethically to procure these or protect ourselves from them, to procure the ones we like and protect ourselves from the ones we don't like. Even when we are successful in getting the pleasant 4, our attachment to them creates problems as we cling to them and fear losing them. They finally served what I like, but there isn't a whole lot of it in the pot. So I'll take what the most I can take and still look like I'm not being greedy. And I'll go back to because I want a good reputation. I don't want to be known as greedy. And I'll go back and I'll eat it as fast as I can so I can beat everybody back here to get seconds. And then with seconds, I can take as much as I like because everybody's had firsts already. Good plan, huh? Okay. But what happens if somebody else gets to the seconds before I do? Oh no, my happiness is disappearing. Oh, that tofu is vanishing in front of my eyes. Yeah. And the rice noodles. Oh, how I long for rice noodles. They were really good today. They weren't too crunchy. Yeah. Good job. Sometimes people make rice noodles and it tastes like cornflakes. Crunch, 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 crunch. Okay. So we cling to what we like. We fear not getting it. We get upset when it's something we don't like. So, of course, I'm talking about things that are small, but we get upset about these things. Imagine what happens when it's a big thing. You're getting married and the wedding cake is stale. Oh, you look in disbelief. My wedding cake was stale. We even gave them the recipe to cook it, and it was all dry. And this is your day when you're supposed to be queen for a day, and everybody's supposed to love your wedding cake, and it didn't taste very good. Don't you feel sorry for me? 50 years later. Yeah, it's about almost 50 years. And I still remember the stale wedding cake. And you know what happened at my brother's wedding? Yeah. So I don't know what exactly happened, but there was some controversy about the payment for the caterer. And I think, they were going to pay the caterer later, and the caterer wanted to be paid then. So the caterer sat on the hood of my parents' car so they couldn't drive away. Yeah, because they wanted their money. A good story to tell about your wedding, isn't it? Then they don't have to tell their story about, my brother doesn't have to say, and my sister, who was a Buddhist nun, walked down the aisle. You know, he can tell this story, which is better. You know. Okay. When we don't get the four that we want, our dejection leads to depression, anger, and even rage. Yeah, if somebody calls you a name, we can get totally enraged and bananas about it. Yeah. As a result, we act in ways that harm others and create suffering for ourselves. The 8 worldly concerns also distract us from spiritual practice, consuming our time and energy with plans of how to get what we want, okay, anxiety about maybe we won't get it, and worry about what we're going to do if we don't get it or if we lose it once we get it. So these 8 get us involved in destructive actions, fighting with others, taking their possessions, using sexuality unwisely and unkindly, lying, creating disharmony, speaking harshly, gossiping, coveting, thinking malicious thoughts, and pursuing wrong views. Yeah, we just get completely involved in negative actions. Yeah. There's no space in our minds for virtuous mental states, such as genuine love and compassion, generosity, ethical conduct, fortitude, joyous effort, meditative stability, or wisdom. When those 8 are in our mind, no space for anything virtuous in our mind. Yeah, we are out to lunch. And we don't even realize that we're out to lunch because we're so involved in our story about I've got to get this or I've got to get away from that, that we don't even think about what's virtue and what's non-virtue. Yeah, we're just totally sunk into the present situation, which is going to be transient and it's not going to last for long anyway. In addition, the 8 worldly concerns corrupt our Dharma practice by stimulating us to do the right thing for the wrong reason. Yeah. I was never very good in English memorizing poetry, but the one thing that stuck in my mind was a question by T.S. Eliot. Let's see if I can remember it now. The greatest treason. I can't even remember. There's a first phrase. Da 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 is the greatest treason, to do the right thing for the wrong reason. I need to find out what that first part of the phrase is. Yeah? But it always stuck in my mind, to do the right thing for the wrong reason. That's not good. Yeah? That's deceptive. That's, not good. So 8 worldly concerns make us do that. Okay, so they corrupt our Dharma practice, stimulating us to do the right thing for the wrong reason. For example, instead of meditating in order to gain liberation, we sit in meditation position with a distracted mind, trying to appear like a spiritual practitioner to others. So our motivation isn't, I want to meditate and improve the state of our mind. Our motivation is, I want to look like I'm a spiritual practitioner. Okay. Rather than give a donation to a charity with the motivation to benefit the recipients, we do so with the wish to appear rich or generous in others' eyes. Okay, so our motivations get corrupt. We do something that's very nice, but our motivation is corrupt. We're seeking status or wealth or something. Okay, the next section is on worldly life and Dharma action. So the difference between worldly actions and Dharma actions is the presence or absence of the 8 worldly concerns. This is the demarcation. If you want to know what is a Dharma action, what isn't, this is the demarcation of it, whether there's the presence or absence of the 8 worldly concerns. Subduing the gross forms of these 8 is the first step in living a spiritual or Dharma life. So the first step is an all-out assault on our everyday motivation. Because our everyday motivation is to secure money and possessions, appreciation, approval, praise, good reputation, and pleasant sensory experiences. And the other part of our daily motivation is to avoid losing our money and possessions, to avoid blame and disapproval, to avoid a bad reputation, and to avoid anything that we don't like. And so, these 8 worldly concerns, because this is how we spend most of our life. And so if we want to have a spiritual life, the first thing is to try and subdue these 8 vicious motivations. Yeah. And it's hard because we are very familiar with them. And we are also terrified that if we don't get 4, and if we do get the other 4, that then we're going to be miserable. Yeah. And we develop all sorts of extreme ideas like, oh, I am so attached to food, so the way to get rid of my attachment to food is I am not going to eat. Stupid. That's not how you cut your attachment to food. Okay, that just makes you sick and in a bad mood. It doesn't cut your attachment to the food. Yeah, you need to develop some wisdom, understanding the nature of the food in order to cut your attachment to it. Okay. And then it also means that, all the ways that we have of creating a good impression on others. Yeah, do you have ways that you use when you meet new people or even old people? How do I present myself so that I create a good impression? Yeah. And here's my card. And my card, when I was young, it started out as just a small one like this. Now it goes like that. It unfolds because now I have so many titles. And, when I meet a new person, I want them to know all the titles that I have and all the things that I've done. So here's the web addresses for my 10 websites. Okay. And here's where my articles have been published. Here are my awards. Actually, I take out my phone. Yeah, you don't even need to go home and look this up. I will show you. Here are the pictures when I went to, Afghanistan in 1973. And here are the pictures when I went to the South Pole. And here are the pictures. I don't want to brag, but here's the picture of me and Donnie. Oh. Yeah. And, and so we try and make a good impression on other people, don't we? Okay. So this is the kind of thing that we have to really work with in order to have a spiritual life. Okay, subduing the gross forms of these 8 is the first step in living a spiritual or Dharma life. Doing this requires time and persistent effort and leads to a peaceful mind. And we have to be very patient with ourselves, and we have to encourage ourselves, and we have to accept that this is going to take time, and we go about it slowly. And that's okay. The thing is just to make effort to go in that direction. Okay? We will begin to consider that when we will be reborn, and we will begin to consider that we will be reborn, and we will become concerned with creating the causes for a good rebirth that will enable us to continue our Dharma practice. On that basis, we can then cultivate even more noble motivations, such as seeking liberation from cyclic existence and progressing on the path to full awakening, so we can be of the most effective and long-lasting benefit to each and every living being. Okay, so we have to work at subduing those 8, and that gives us the mental space to create all the other good motivations and virtuous actions. Genuine Dharma practice is not the superficial appearance of reciting prayers, making prostrations, reading scriptures, or looking holy. Okay? It is about monitoring and improving what is going on in our mind, especially our emotional state. By taming the mind, our speech and physical actions will naturally improve as well. Is our mind seeking only the happiness of this life? Or is there mental space to think about future lives, liberation, and full awakening? Is our intention focused on our own self-centered concerns? Or is it directed towards the welfare of others? Are we thinking about long-term benefit or short-term pleasure? So we will become much more aware of those questions and looking at ourselves and checking what's going on in our mind. In short, actions done with only a concern for this life and for the sake of the 8 worldly concerns are worldly actions. Actions done seeking a good rebirth, liberation from cyclic existence, or full awakening are Dharma actions. Bearing this in mind is worthwhile, since there is a huge difference between worldly and Dharma actions, and it is very easy for us to fall into old bad habits, seeking wealth, praise, good reputation, and sensory pleasure. Isn't it? We all fall into those habits. Sometimes people mistakenly think that practicing Dharma means having to give up everything that gives us happiness. In fact, chocolate cake, money, or a boyfriend is not the problem. The problem is not the object that we are attached to. Okay? The attachment, resentment, arrogance, and jealousy that arise in us in reaction to those things or people are the sources of the problems. So it's not a thing of, I can't eat ice cream anymore, and I can't talk to my friends because I'm attached to them, and I can't do this and I can't do that, and, well, where's the nettle soup? Yeah. A little bit of nettle soup isn't good enough. Milarepa ate only nettle soup. I'm going to be like Milarepa. chow down those nettles. Yeah. No, it doesn't mean that that's what we need to do. Yeah. And I'm getting rid of my bed. I'm going to sleep on the floor. Yeah. No, it doesn't mean that. Okay. Because it's our emotions, what's going on in our mind that is the problem. In other words, the deeper cause for our suffering is not the inability to get what we want. Okay. Repeat. The deeper cause for our suffering is not the inability to get what we want. It is the craving that is obsessed with getting it. It's the mind that says, I have to have this, or else I cannot be happy. That is what is the source of the suffering, not the object and not the inability to have it. It's the mind of craving that says, but I want it, I've got to have it, and if I don't have it, I'm going to be miserable. That's the problem. The moment we give up the self-centered craving that seeks my happiness now, our mind is peaceful and relaxed. Okay? When you're sitting here wondering what's for dinner, I want this, I don't want that, and you're all set to get upset because what is it? What is it? Yeah, what's your least favorite leftover? She said Brussels sprouts. Oh no, we have Brussels sprouts again for medicine. Oh God, how am I going to make it? Brussels sprouts. Yeah, and crunchy bean noodles. Okay, so the moment we give up the craving and the dislike for what we don't want, then our mind is okay. We begin practicing the Dharma by observing our mind and investigating our thoughts and emotions. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? What is the story that my mind is making up that lies behind this emotion? Is this mental state realistic? Is it beneficial? Am I exaggerating the good qualities of someone or something? Am I focusing on a particular goal because it will bring me happiness in the short term, even though it may interfere with others' well-being or even cause me problems in the long term? Am I overestimating someone's faults? Are my expectations of others unrealistic? Yeah, so this is the kind of thing that we'll start paying attention to. When we begin in earnest to observe our mind and investigate our thoughts and emotions, especially the habitual ones that arise so easily, we have begun real Dharma practice. Then, by studying the Buddha's teachings, we learn the antidotes to the afflictions, practice them, and learn to cultivate constructive, realistic mental states. This will lead us to experience happiness now and in the future. In addition, we will become able to benefit others temporarily and ultimately. This is what gives meaning and satisfaction to our lives. Such fulfillment, coming from a life well lived, is more worthwhile than possessions, money, praise and approval, good reputation, and sensual pleasure. Yeah, because when we die, all those things that are the happiness of this life, none of them come with us. Yeah, but if we have lived in an honest way, in a kind way, then we feel satisfied with ourselves. We feel that our life was worthwhile. Yeah, and then dying is not a problem. Okay, let's stop for a minute. Ooh, more pages. See if there's any questions. Yes.
When it says subduing the gross forms of these 8 is the first step in living a Dharma life, how long and how subtle do these 8 worldly concerns go on the path? I mean, is this a relentless vigilance till we get to way into the path?
Well, you know, I asked the Buddha that, and he said, if you practice for, 300,000 great eons, yeah, then maybe kind of you'll reduce 1%.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought as much.
Yeah. Okay, so you got it. But then I asked another Buddha, and he said, that if you practice for 45,000 countless great eons, yeah, then you will have eliminated 90%. Okay?
That was the answer I was hoping for.
Okay. Yes.
Part of the T.S. Eliot quote is, the last temptation is the greatest treason.
The last temptation is the greatest treason, to do the right thing for the wrong reason. Yeah, the last temptation is the greatest treason. It's true, isn't it?
It's really radical what you spoke about earlier, where it doesn't really matter what the person's intention is. I mean, that's really radical. And a very extreme example, of course, came to my mind. And a couple of years ago, my sister-in-law's sister, she was struck by that truck that didn't see her in the morning.
Yeah.
And she was out walking her dog. Mm. And there was a court case that finally happened a few months ago. And I think my sister-in-law's family were very relieved to know that he had no intention to harm her. He didn't purposely strike her down. He didn't see her.
Hmm.
And he wasn't drunk, and he wasn't on drugs. And that, for an ordinary mind, that gave them more space to continue with their healing. But if it had been proven, that, or somehow they know that his intention was to harm, that's a whole big deal to try and work with, even for a spiritual practitioner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. But when you think about it, somebody who hit a stranger who was walking their dog, do you think somebody would do that deliberately?
Probably not, but I think if the person had been under the influence of drugs or alcohol, that would have shifted the whole thing, and probably would have made it more difficult to accept. Anyway, it all comes back to the person, and it's just challenging.
Yeah, it comes back to the person. Yeah. But the thing is, that's what's so interesting about how the mind works, because the situation remains exactly the same. The person died. But if you hear that they died from this, your mind is relieved. If you hear they died from that, your mind is angry. So what's making you either relieved or angry is not the external situation. It's hearing certain words. It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah? It's the hearing of certain words, not the change of the external situation. Yeah, I've often thought about that, Because we could have somebody that we care about very much, and, now we have modern, communication, but before, it could take some time before we heard that they were sick or that they died. And before you hear it, you're okay, you're not unhappy. When you hear it, that's when you get upset or unhappy. So what that says is, it's not so much the event. I mean, the event, yes, is important, but it's whether we know about the event or not that makes us either happy or unhappy. You getting what I'm saying? Yeah.
I was reflecting on what you said about blame and disapproval, and noticing that I react differently to it depending on the state my mind was in when I created the action that resulted in the blame or disapproval. So, for example, if there was dishonorable intention and it results in blame or bad reputation and disapproval, then that's like a mirror to, that feels really bad.
Yeah.
But if I actually feel like I'm acting in alignment with my highest values, and that action results in blame or disapproval, it doesn't feel as bad. It actually almost feels kind of good, because I feel like, wow, I had the courage to do something even though other people didn't like it.
Right. And that's the point. When we're able to evaluate our own actions, then we don't go up and down so much regarding blame and disapproval. Because if we acted in a way that we feel we did our best, we acted with integrity, if other people disapprove, then we don't go into self-doubt and loss of self-confidence. Yeah, because we can accurately assess what we did. On the other hand, if we did something with a rotten motivation and somebody notices, if we try and be a person with integrity, then we don't get bummed out. We say, yeah, thank you for pointing that out to me. I had overlooked that, and I don't want to be a person who acts like that. Yeah. So that ability to evaluate and assess our own mental states and our actions, that frees us from depending so much on what other people think about us. Yeah, it gives us a lot of mental freedom.
How do we work with our mind when we're the person, talking to someone and expressing our disapproval of what they did, and they're effectively nonplussed, saying, I think what I did was fine, I have clarity. An example that comes to mind is like if I'm, imagining a student maybe who cheated on something or did something like that, and they're saying, well, I know what really matters in the end is having the degree in hand. It doesn't, how do we work with our mind when we see someone who says, my action is fine, I'm not going to agree with the criticism you're giving me?
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think it depends a lot on the situation. With that example that you gave, a student maybe cheated on the test, and they say, but the end thing is, I want the piece of paper because that's what matters. And you can say, you're absolutely right. At the end of your education, it's the piece of paper that matters. However, how do you feel about yourself? That matters too. Yeah. So do you feel, how do you feel about, kind of cheating on the test? Are you okay with that simply because it, gets you the piece of paper? Or does somehow it leave you feel uncomfortable about yourself? Yeah. So some students you can start that conversation with, just asking them, how do you feel about yourself? Yeah. If you go into the thing with, but you cheated and cheating is dishonorable, and there were other people who could have gotten the score and because they did better and you did this and denied them of it, then the person's very likely to get defensive. Yeah, we get defensive even if we know what the other person is saying is true and right. Don't we? We just don't like hearing it. Even we know inside that what they're saying is right. So it often works better to ask somebody questions. And then in some situations, the person just says, well, I don't care, and they aren't even open to discussing it. Yeah. Then it depends. If you're in a position of authority and you know that they've cheated, then you can show them the result that comes to them from cheating. Yeah. And that hopefully will make them think about it again. But you do it without a mind that wants to make them suffer, but with a mind that wants them to learn to appreciate their own integrity. Yeah, so that they can feel good about themselves. And this is just the introduction, but it's laying the groundwork that is so important. So even though many of you may have heard this before, I think it's always good to hear it again because it reminds us of what's important.